Five. Good evening and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment. It is Thursday, August the 15th, 2024, 6:30 p.m. and I will call this meeting to order. I will remind committee members of any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. I see none noted. The first order of business then would be the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. That would be the Committee of Adjustment meeting held July the 18th, 2024. Any errors or omissions? Then I need a mover and seconder for the following, that the minutes from the Committee of Adjustment meeting held July the 18th, 2024 be approved as presented. Moved by committee member Weiser, second by committee member Froese. All in favor? That's carried. We have two applications this evening. The first application is dealing with a minor variance application A-1224 at 55641 Maple Grove Line, Dochap. The purpose of this variance is to grant relief from the following zoning bylaw regulations for the development of a detached additional residential unit on the subject property located at 55641 Maple Grove Line, south side, east of Sandytown Road. Section 4.2C, to permit an accessory building in the front yard. Section 4.2D, to permit an accessory building closer to the street than the main building. And Section 4.2F, to permit an accessory building that is 44%, 108.3 square meters, the size of the principal farm dwelling, whereas 25% or 61.3 square meters is required for accessory use buildings accessory to the municipal farm dwelling of 245.3 square meters. The effect of this variance is to permit a detached ARU that is located in the front yard and closer to the street than the main building, as well as an increased percentage coverage size of an accessory building accessory to the principal farm dwelling on the subject property. At this time, we will entertain the staff presentation. That's report DS 5624 by Margaret Underhill, Secretary Treasurer, regarding minor variance application A-1224 at 55641 Maple Grove Line, Dochap. Good evening, Marg.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee. So the report before you, submitted by appointed agent Bill Braun on behalf of Sean and Jennifer Dochef, is before you for consideration for minor variance for the purpose and the effect that you've read in the report and also just heard from our chair. So the Committee of Adjustment must be satisfied that the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act for a minor variance. The planner's memorandum dated August the 7th, included with the report, outlines the full analysis of the 4 tests and the variances required for compliance. Staff and planner concur that the application meets the criteria to permit the placement of an ARU, an additional residential unit, in the front yard and to permit it be placed closer to the street than the main building and to be constructed larger than the permitted 25% for an accessory use building accessory to the principal farm dwelling. I will leave it with you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you very much for that report. I don't see an applicant present or an agent.
Yes, there is.
Ah, there is. Would you like to speak on this file? Not yet. We haven't got there, but if we do, perhaps we'll direct them to you. All right, but we'll get you to sign in. And my apologies. While that is underway, are there any public submissions, Marg, any correspondence or anything with this application?
There are no public submissions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, turn it over to committee questions and discussion. Does anyone have any concerns, questions, discussion points? Okay. Well, I'm familiar with the site. I'm familiar with the placement where it's going to be. If I understand and recall from the file, it's 450 meters off the main road. It's back in. I don't think it's going to disturb the neighbors one bit. All right. Those are just my comments. Any other comments, questions? All right. Thank you. That was easy, Bill. Thank you. We'll move on to the decision of the committee. Need a mover and seconder for the following. That the Committee of Adjustment Secretary Treasurer's Report DS 5624 regarding the Dochef minor variance be received, and that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions received on this application, the effect of which helped the committee to make an informed decision. And whereas the committee agrees that the proposed variance as presented meets section 45(1)(1) of the Planning Act and is considered minor. Therefore, application A 1224 submitted by Sean and Jennifer Dochef pursuant to section 45 of the Planning Act for a minor variance is granted to allow relief from Municipality of Bayham zoning bylaw Z 456 2003, specifically section 4.2C to permit an accessory building in the front yard. Section 4.2D to permit an accessory building closer to the street than the main building. And section 4.2F to permit an accessory building that is 44%, 108.3 square meters, the size of the principal farm dwelling, whereas 25%, 61.3 square meters is required for accessory use building accessory to the principal farm dwelling, which is 245.3 square meters. Anyone interested in moving and seconding that? Committee member Froese, and I believe committee member Weiser, all in favor? And that's carried. Moving on with the second application. Deals with minor variance application A 1324, 12 Edison Drive, Craig. The purpose of the variance is to permit the extension of a legal non-conforming use in the OS 1 zone, where a residential use is not permitted under the current and in-force zoning bylaw. Further, an additional variance is required to grant relief from section 10.5 of the zoning bylaw to permit a maximum height of 8.0 meters, whereas a maximum height of 7.0 meters is required. The subject property is known as 12 Edison Drive, east side and north of Plank Road within the village of Vienna. The effect of this variance is to permit a two-story addition to the maximum height of 8.0 meters to the rear of the existing one-story single detached dwelling, which is a legal non-conforming use of the OS 1 zone. Marg, we will entertain your report. That's DS 5724 regarding this minor variance application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the committee. The report before you was submitted by appointed agent Leslie Hutton-Rora from G. Douglas Valley Limited on behalf of the owner, John Craig, for 12 Edison Drive in Vienna. The purpose and the effect you've read in the report and also just heard from our chair. The Committee of Adjustment must be satisfied again with the application that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act for a minor variance. The planner's memorandum dated August the 7th, 2024 outlines the full analysis of the 4 tests and outlines the variances that are required for compliance. Staff and planner concur that the application meets the criteria to permit the extension of a legal non-conforming use and permit a maximum height of 8 meters subject to an updated written approval from the Long Point Region Conservation Authority. And I leave it with you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. As the applicant, do you have anything you wish to add to the file?
Just here to answer any questions.
Okay. Since you spoke up, you get the pleasure of signing in.
Thank you.
Okay, and I understand that there have been some public submissions on this file.
Yes, Mr. Chair, received today at 3:39 in the afternoon, we received correspondence from Suzanne Schlotzhauer supporting the application with comments for consideration with our housekeeping bylaw, which is another application for zoning that will be coming forward to council. So the comments have been circulated to you, the committee, this afternoon after received for your review and consideration.
Thank you. Moving on to committee questions and discussion. Does anyone have any questions? Any concerns? Okay, seeing none, we will move on then with the decision. The motion reads that the Committee of Adjustment Secretary Treasurer's Report DS 5724 regarding the Craig minor variance be received, and that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions received on this application, the effect of which helped the committee to make an informed decision. And whereas the committee agrees that the proposed variance as presented meets section 45(1)(1) of the Planning Act and is considered minor. Therefore, application A 1324 submitted by John Craig pursuant to section 45 of the Planning Act for a minor variance is granted to allow relief from the municipality of Bayham zoning bylaw Z 456/2003 specifically to permit the extension of a legal non-conforming use, and section 10.5 to permit a maximum building height of 8.0 meters, whereas a maximum height of 7.0 meters is required in the R1 zone, subject to the following conditions: that the owner receives written approval from the Long Point Region Conservation Authority for the proposed two-story addition to an existing dwelling within the LPRCA regulation limit. Mover and seconder, please. Committee member Emerson and committee member Chilcott. Well, second, all in favor? You waving at me? Not that I was. You're correct, I didn't. And that usually any submissions are done in a written format. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the adjournment motion. That the Committee of Adjustment meeting for consideration of minor variance applications A 1224 and A 1324 be adjourned at 6:42 PM. And that in accordance with the regulations of the Planning Act, notices of decision be circulated by the Secretary Treasurer accordingly. Mover and seconder, please. Committee member Weiser, committee member Chilcott. All in favor? That is carried. We are adjourned.
Yes.
We're behind.
Right. Virgin files, so that was efficient, right? Carries on. That's why it's
Good evening. Welcome to the regular session of council. It is Thursday, August the 15th, 2024, 7:02 PM. And I will call this meeting to order. Remind members of disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Being none noted. I don't believe there are any additional items on the agenda.
No items tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Moving on to announcements. Anyone have any announcements for this evening? Councilor Chilcott.
Thank you. I don't really think I have to announce this, but Watermelon Fest is coming up on the 24th of August. I hope everyone will attend.
Where's it going to be held?
It's going to be held at the Stratfordville Community Center. Thank you very much.
Is there a breakfast or anything proceeding?
Pancake
I don't
breakfast.
know. Is there a pancake breakfast?
Yeah, the fire hall,
Thanks.
Stratfordville Fire Hall pancake breakfast. Parade starts at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay. Any other announcements, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder to everyone that this Sunday is Decoration Day for Stratfordville, Colton and Smuck cemeteries. The following week, August 25th, that's the day after Watermelon Fest, we have Decoration Day at Best, Bayham West, which is the Richmond Cemetery, Light, and Guysborough. September the 1st is Eden Decoration Day. So just a reminder that those are coming up.
Just add your list. St. Luke's is also on the 25th,
Oh.
but it's not a municipal cemetery.
Ah, thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. I'll add that.
Any other announcements? Thomas, please.
Just a quick reminder, Mr. Mayor, that the municipal offices will be closed on Monday, September the 2nd in observation of Labor Day.
Going on around the room, any more announcements?
Sure. There's the kayak fun run for the Port Rural Historical Society, Saturday.
On this Saturday?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a bit of a party at the Legion on Saturday afternoon. Friday night is the 4th concert in the concert series for fundraiser for the Lighthouse at church in Vienna.
This Friday or next?
This one.
This
All
one.
right. Thank you. What time does the kayak thing begin?
I'm not really sure. In the morning, mid-morning, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure you can find it on Facebook.
I found it.
Okay. We've pretty well announced out,
Mhm.
other than just to remind everyone that there is the Warden's Golf Tournament coming up on the 26th. Still time to register if you're interested. It's at Iron Horse. And I think council, we need to have a discussion if we are going to participate or put a team together for the bowling challenge
Ah, Terrace
in
Lodge.
support of Terrace Lodge fundraising.
Mhm.
It's I think we'll have to have that discussion. All right. I don't see any presentations this evening or delegations. Brings us to section 7, adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. That's regular meeting held July the 18th, 2024, and a statutory planning meeting held July the 18th, 2024. The minutes were previously circulated. Hopefully everyone's had opportunity to peruse them. If there are no errors or omissions, I entertain a mover and seconder for the following, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council and statutory planning meeting held July the 18th, 2024 be approved as presented. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Weiser and Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? Carried. Skipping down the agenda. Oh, we have. Wasn't notified of that. Apparently, section 9, open forum, we have one member of the public to speak to item 16E. It's you, Suzanne. Okay, welcome to the podium.
You.
Got that ready to go. There,
Ready?
whenever you are.
I wish to express my concern regarding the recent recommendation to council by the Waterfront Advisory Committee to remove the $75,000 budget item for the playground equipment at the Port Burwell East Beach. As a committee of council, WAC is expected to advocate for the community. However, it appears that no report was brought forward to support this recommendation, and there seems to have been no consultation with the community to determine whether this is something we want. For decades, Port Burwell residents have advocated to have a playground near the East Beach. It is disheartening to see this effort potentially undone without clear justification. According to WAC's terms of reference, their mandate is to support Blue Flag program. I believe there is ways to plan programs that align with this mandate without taking away valuable amenities from our children. Amenities that align with BAM's strategic plan, a plan ratified by this council with the promise to enhance the East Beach. I urge WAC to provide evidence or a detailed explanation to bring forward to council to support their recommendation. If the community's needs and desires are not being met or considered, it is important for us to voice our concerns and seek a resolution that benefits everyone. There's a plethora of information on the benefits of playgrounds at beaches to enhance quality of life and quality of place. I have provided council a long list of benefits to consider by email. By focusing on these points, Port Burwell can leverage its beach playground equipment and amenities, not only to enhance local quality of life, but also to attract visitors, support economic growth, and foster a sense of community pride and well-being. I urge council to reach out to the community, hold a town hall, find out what we want for our community. Let's work together to ensure that our community's interests are represented and that we continue to make positive changes for our families. Remember, Port Burwell's beach is BAM's beach.
Well timed. All right, thank you. Now slipping down to section 12, development services, sustainability and conservation, 12.1 correspondence, and 12.1.1 to receive for information. Number of items. I'll read them off. Item A, notice of decision regarding minor variance A 1124 Deconic. Item B, notice of passing regarding zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0924 Uranus. Item C, notice of passing regarding zoning bylaw amendment ZBA of 1724 Giles. D, notice of public meeting regarding proposed minor variance A 1224 Dochef. Item E, notice of public meeting regarding proposed minor variance A 1324 Craig. F, notice of public meeting regarding proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2024 Cadman. And item G, notice of public meeting regarding proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2124 Municipality of Bayham. Any questions or concerns regarding these items for information? If not, mover and seconder for the following, that items 12.1.1A through G be received for information. Councillor Chilcott will move and Deputy Mayor Weiser will second. All in favor? That's carried. Moving to 12.2, reports to council. We have report DS 5824 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator and Deputy Clerk regarding consent application E 6624 Hebert N at 9411 Elgin Street, Straffordville. Good evening, Marg.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. So this report before you is for consent application E 66-24, submitted by appointed agent David Rowe on behalf of landowner Neil Hebert at 9411 Elgin Street here in Straffordville. The application proposes to sever and create a new lot, and the retained lands would accommodate an existing one-story single detached dwelling. The application will go before the Elgin County Land Division Committee on August the 28th. The planner's memorandum attached dated August the 7th, 2024 analyzes the application subject to our own official plan and zoning bylaw. Considering all of the elements of the application, we would be recommending the standard conditions that we have, being an engineered stamped stormwater management plan with a drainage grading plan, civic number signage, survey, cash in lieu payment for the creation of the lot, a road entrance permit off Elgin Street, and the planning report fee. Other conditions apply regarding a development agreement for street construction because they will be required to extend Elgin Street to provide frontage to the new lot. Drain deposit for reassessment for the Stratfordville Drain number 8. And they will be required to install the municipal sanitary sewer connection and install a private well. Staff and municipal planner recommend the support of the consent application for the creation of one lot fronting on Elgin Street with the recommended conditions as provided. And I leave it with you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that report, Mark. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this application? No? Yeah, that's my concern. Who's reading this resolution?
Yeah, the concern is the length of the recommendation.
Yeah, it is. All right, okay. Hearing or seeing no questions for staff, then we'll move with the move on with the proposed resolution. That report DS 5824 regarding the consent application E6624 Hebert be received. And that council recommend to the Elgin County Land Division Committee that consent application E6624 be granted, subject to the following conditions and considerations. Number 1, that the owner installs a new private well on the proposed severed lot, providing the municipality with water quantity and water quality reports for bacteria and nitrates content, meeting the provincial standards for residential use as a matter of public health and safety. Number 2, that the owner obtains a permit from the municipality of Bayham for the installation of a new municipal sanitary service connection to the proposed severed lot. Number 3, that the owner enter into a development agreement with the municipality to upgrade the public right-of-ways lands along the entirety of the width and frontage of the proposed severed lot to current municipal standards, including but not limited to roadway surface widening, turnaround at the southern terminus meeting municipal design standards, signage, and ditch drainage works with a security deposit based on the percentage of the estimated cost for road works and insurance indemnifying the municipality. The extent of the upgrades will be determined subsequent to detailed review of the owner's professional design plans for the development and prior to the signing of the development agreement in consultation with the municipality and or municipal engineering consultants and the owner's professional engineering consultant. Number 4, that the owner obtains approval from the municipality of Bayham for road entrance permit, that's on Elgin Street, for a new access to the proposed severed lot. Number 5, that the owner provides an engineered stamped grading and stormwater management plan for each parcel to demonstrate that each will drain properly with no negative impacts on the neighboring lands or the street, all to the satisfaction of the municipality of Bayham. Number 6, that the applicant initiate and assume, if required, all engineering costs associated with the preparation of the revised assessment schedule for the Stratfordville Drain number 8 in accordance with the Drainage Act, RSO 1990, as amended, with a deposit to be paid in full to the municipality prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. If the deposit does not cover the costs of the revised assessment schedule, the applicant will be billed for any additional costs incurred. Number 7, that the owner pay fees as required in municipal bylaw number 2020-053, cash in lieu of parkland. Number 8, that the owner provides a digital copy of a survey of the subject lands. Number 9, that the owner applies and pays all fees to the municipality with respect to civic addressing, signage for the severed lot. Number 10, that the owner provides a planning report fee payable to the municipality of Bayham. Do I have a willing mover and seconder? And please don't ask me to read it again.
I'll move.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Weiser will move. Who's going to, Councillor Froze? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I don't think the recommendations get any shorter.
Hmm.
Thank you for that one, Marg. Moving on with item B, it's report DS 5924 by Marg Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding official plan amendment OPA 0224. 1830567 Ontario Inc. at 55942 Maple Grove Line, OPA number 37. Excuse me.
Thank you. So the report before you is in regards to an application for an official plan amendment submitted by appointed agent Jesse Froze on behalf of 1830567 Ontario Inc. They're proposing a site-specific official plan amendment on their lands at 55942 Maple Grove Line. So the purpose of the official plan amendment is to add a site-specific subsection to permit the severance of an existing single detached dwelling constructed in 2021 on the subject lands, made surplus through farm consolidation that does not conform to section 2.1.7.1 of the official plan. That section requires that consents to sever and convey existing farm dwellings are to have been built and occupied a minimum of 10 years prior to the date of consent application. The existing single detached dwelling to be severed as a surplus farm dwelling was constructed as said in 2021, but it was constructed to replace the previous and now demolished single detached dwelling that was no longer safe and uninhabitable. The effect of the OP amendment will be to permit this severance for this building that was occupied less than 10 years prior to the date of the consent application. Notice a public meeting was circulated. The meeting was held July the 18th. The appointed agent was present. There were no public presentations, no oral or written public submissions received. The attached municipal planner's memorandum dated August the 7th, 2024 provides the details and rationale for the recommendation to adopt OPA number 37, subject to the provincial policy statement, Algon County's and BAM's official plans. The draft OPA is attached to the report for your consideration. Should council adopt the OPA, it will then be forwarded to the approval authority, the County of Algon, for their consideration. Following the approval of the OPA, the applicant plans to submit a consent application to sever the dwelling from the lands. Municipal recommended consent conditions will include, firstly, a zoning amendment to change the zoning on the retained parcel to site-specific special agricultural A2, and that will prohibit any future residential dwellings. Also to recognize the undersized nature of the agricultural parcel. Secondly, a zoning amendment is required to change the severed parcel to a site-specific rural residential zone, RR, to permit a reduced lot frontage. Rezoning is required to meet the official plan policies for the severance of surplus farm dwellings. I leave it with you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that report, Mark. Does anyone have any questions? Or any, any concerns? Okay. Again, I'm familiar with the property, the circumstances. I don't have any particular issues, but it does ask for changes. It's not recognized. All right. Okay. Well, seeing no questions or comments from council, then we will attempt this motion. At staff report DS 5924 regarding the official plan amendment application OPA 1/24 submitted by Underhill. That's not right. Better amend that. Submitted by 1830567 Ontario Inc. Okay. Be received for information. And that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations, Bill 73, Smart Growth for Our Communities Act, 2015. It be pointed out that at the public participation meeting held July the 18th, 2024, associated with this application, the appointed agent was present and there were no written or no oral or written public submissions, and that all considerations were taken into account in council's decision passing this resolution. And that council considers the proposed amendments to add site-specific text to the official plan to be consistent with Provincial Policy Statement 2020 and in conformity to the Elgin County Official Plan and Municipality of Bayham Official Plan. And that bylaw number 2024-048 being an adopting bylaw for official plan amendment number 37 for the purpose of adding a new site-specific subsection to permit the severance of an existing single detached dwelling constructed in 2021 on the subject lands made surplus through farm consolidation that does not conform to section 2.1.7.1 of the official plan, which currently requires that the consents to sever and convey an existing farm dwelling requires the dwelling to have been built and occupied a minimum of 10 years prior to the date of consent application, and whereby the existing single detached dwelling to be severed through a future consent application as a result or as a surplus farm dwelling was constructed in 2021 to replace the previous and now demolished single detached dwelling built in 1900, that it was uninhabitable and in a state of disrepair, and that adopted official plan amendment number 37 be forwarded to the County of Elgin for approval. I need a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Froese will move, Deputy Mayor Weiser will second. All in favor? That's carried. Item C. Report DS 6024 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk regarding rezoning application ZBA 1524 Bergen at 10564 Culloden Road.
Thank you,
Mark.
Mr. Mayor. So the report before you is for consideration of rezoning the application submitted by appointed agent Jesse Froese on behalf of Aganita Bergen for the property at 10564 Culloden Road in the hamlet of North Hall. The purpose of the amendment is to rezone two portions of the subject lands as a result of a severance for a creation of a new lot. The proposed retained lot is to be rezoned from A1 agriculture to site-specific agricultural A1 47, and that would permit a minimum lot area of 7.9 hectares. Also permit a minimum lot frontage of 22 meters and a minimum side yard depth of 2.8 meters for the existing accessory building. The proposed severed lot is to be rezoned from holding hamlet residential HR H1 to HR in order to remove the H1 holding provision. And the H1 provision was pertaining to adequate water and sanitary servicing. The effect will be to recognize the minimum lot area, minimum lot frontage deficiency, and permit the reduced minimum side yard depth for the existing dwelling. Further, the effect of the bylaw will be to sever the existing single detached dwelling on the proposed severed lot and remove the H1 holding. As part of clearing the consent conditions for Elgin Land Division Committee File E1824 that was conditionally approved on March 27th, 2024. Public meeting was held July 18 with the appointed agent in attendance, no oral or written public submissions. So the staff report DS 1524 regarding the consent application, along with the planner's memorandum dated March 11, was presented, considered, and supported by council on March 21st, 2024. The Land Division Committee conditionally granted the application on March 27th, 2024, including the condition to rezone the severed and retained parcels. So the requirement of the owner in order to remove the holding provision was to install a well and provide water testing results meeting provincial standards, and the installation of the well has been completed and satisfactory testing results have been provided. Staff and planner concur the rezoning application meets the policies and recommend approval to change the zoning. And that would satisfy the condition of the consent application. And I'll leave it with you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that report. Does anyone have any questions, concerns? Okay. The motion would read that report DS 6024 regarding the Bergen rezoning application ZBA 1524 be received for information. And that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations Bill 73 Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015. It be pointed out that at the public participation meeting held July the 18th, 2024, associated with this application, the appointed agent was in attendance with no oral or written submissions received regarding this matter. And that all considerations were taken into account in council's decision passing this resolution. And that zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on a property located in Part Lot 6, Concession 9, known municipally as 10564 Culloden Road, Hamlet of North Hall, from holding Hamlet Residential to Hamlet Residential Zone on the severed lot, and from agricultural A1 to site-specific agricultural A147 on a portion of the retained parcel as a condition of consent E18-24 to permit the severance of an existing single detached dwelling. And that zoning bylaw number Z 787/2024 be presented to council for enactment. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Weiser will move, Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That's carried. Brings us to item. You know what? We're not gonna do this one all in 3 minutes. We have a public meeting coming at 7:30. Do this for a couple minutes.
Sure.
Bring them in the room for 2 minutes. Welcome to the statutory planning meeting for the municipality of Bayham. It's Thursday, August the 15th, 2024, 7:30 PM, and I will call this meeting to order. I will remind members of any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. This evening, we are dealing with two applications. The first is proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 20-/24 at 13540 Bayham Drive, Cadman. The purpose of this bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property from agricultural A1 zone to a site-specific agricultural A1 XX zone to permit the development of an additional residential unit within a detached accessory building, a pool house, that is 152%, 385.4 square meters, or 4,148 square feet of the principal farm dwelling of 253.1 square meters or 2,724 square feet. Whereas section 4.2 of the zoning bylaw states that 25% or 63.3 square meters or 681 square feet is the required maximum size for an accessory use buildings, accessory to the principal farm dwellings on the subject property. Subject property is known as 13540 Bayham Drive, east side and south of Talbot Line. That's highway number 3. The effect of this bylaw is to facilitate the development of a proposed detached accessory building pool house for the purpose of an ARU on the subject property. This time, I would invite anyone from the public wishing to participate. Please step forward to the podium and sign in. And anyone wishing to speak to this particular application? Okay. I would note that there is no correspondence, seeing confirmation from the clerk. There is no other business. Which brings us to the adjournment motion that the zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council and that pursuant to Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for zoning application ZBA 20/24 is now complete at 7:32 PM. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Froese will move. Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? We're carried. Which brings us to the next public meeting, which I will call to order now at 7:33 PM. Remind members of any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. This public meeting is dealing with a proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 21/24 municipality of Bayham. The purpose of this bylaw is to amend various sections of the zoning bylaw pertaining to additional residential units in order to ensure conformity with the Planning Act and the municipality of Bayham official plan with respect to More Homes Built Faster Act 2022, Bill 23. The proposed revisions are as follows and further detailed in the draft housekeeping amendments for Bill 23, July 2024. Documents available to municipality of Bayham website. Section 2.0, definitions. Replace and revise the definition of dwelling unit second with additional residential unit. Section 4.2F, accessory use. Replace and revise in its entirety regarding the permitted maximum floor areas of accessory use buildings for accessories to the principal farm dwelling in all agricultural zones A1/A1-A and A2, excluding main farm buildings such as barns, greenhouses, stables, and driving sheds. Section 4.9, obnoxious uses. Add water in addition to land and clarify the obnoxious use regulations apply to both vacant lands and lands consisting of buildings and structures. Section 4.32.2, parking requirements. Replace dwelling unit second with additional residential unit in the minimum parking space requirements table. And section 4.59, second dwelling units. Replace the title second dwelling units with additional residential unit and replace the revised subsections A through H in its entirety with new provisions in accordance with the official plan. The amendments are general amendments that do not apply to specific locations in the municipality. Therefore, no key map or zoning bylaw schedule changes are necessary. The effect of this bylaw will be to ensure conformity with the Planning Act legislative changes as a result of More Homes Built Faster Act 2022, Bill 23. In conformity to the Municipality of Bayham official plan, OPA number 34, bylaw number 2023-077, that was adopted by council and approved by Elgin County on November 14th, 2023. At this point, I'll invite any public participation. Anyone wishing to speak to this application, attend the podium and please sign in.
Mr. Mayor and Council. I just heard a whole bunch of legal language. And could you just, before I get started, could you just briefly, in plain English, tell us what does that exactly mean?
Thank you, and give me a minute here and I will, and I'm going to confirm with the planning coordinator, but essentially what you're doing is proposing to change the language from secondary or we used to call them second dwelling units to additional residential units. That's the main thing. That's the main thing. The one with obnoxious uses is just simply adding the word water into the definition as well as land. And
Water is obnoxious?
sometimes,
Mhm.
Okay.
seems like it is this year.
Yeah, it depends on whether you're farming or not.
Correct. And again, with the parking requirements, it's replacing the ARU definition to, or the second dwelling unit with the additional residential units, keeping it consistent with the provincial legislation, language in the legislation. What have I missed, Mark? That's it? Fairly general in nature. That's all it is.
So what benefit then would this be to Bayham and its residents?
It has no net change, as far as I can tell.
Because we're dealing with,
No, it's changing the definition. That's what it's all doing. It's just replacing secondary dwelling units with additional residential units.
but this is where the tricky part comes in, the additional residential units.
Mhm.
What does that exactly mean? Does that cover part-time housing? Does that cover the old farmhouse that was on the farm and the farmer built a new house? So now he's got a vacant building there, or he can rent it out?
Yeah.
Well, how does this apply, and how does this apply to temporary housing for hired help for bunkhouses, to use a general term?
Good point. Marg, I don't believe an ARU is considered supplementary farm dwelling.
To assist Mr. Casinas, provincial legislation was passed a few years back, allowing that properties could have what was called secondary dwelling units or secondary residential units. Different municipalities call it different things, but we are using the terminology additional residential unit. This is what we're proposing to change the wording. We initially started out in our policies calling it a secondary dwelling unit. So we are changing the wording more to be in line with other municipalities and actually the provincial legislation. So what it is the province has said that properties, you're allowed to have what's called a second dwelling unit on your property. To be more clear, legislation says that you can have up to 2 second units on fully serviced properties. They do not talk about secondary dwelling units on agricultural necessarily, but we have policies that you're allowed to have 1 on partial services or totally private services. So it's policies in our zoning bylaw and in our official plan that allows property owners to have these additional residential units. There's specific criteria that they have to meet. It's explained in our official plan and it's explained in our zoning bylaw. There has to be servicing, there has to be parking, and they have to meet the building code. So yes, it is that property owners potentially, if they meet the criteria, could have another dwelling unit on their property. It does not address supplementary farm dwellings. That's a totally different issue. We deal with that differently. So it's not speaking to farm help houses. That's a totally different issue.
It can't be converted.
I don't understand what you mean converted.
Could a bunkhouse, if it became empty, could that be declared a secondary unit and converted as into a second house?
Okay, potentially, if there's an accessory building, it can't be a farm building. You can't convert a farm building to an additional residential unit, but you can take an accessory building residentially purposed that you could convert that to a residence, meeting the building code, meeting all the criteria.
So basically, in plain English, you could take a non-used bunkhouse and convert it into secondary housing.
Potentially, if it meets all the criteria and meets the building code, it could qualify. But ARUs, additional residential units, are not to be used for farm help. That's not the purpose. They're meant to be a permanent additional dwelling unit on a property. So potential to rent it out, like it's for additional housing.
That leads to my second question. So then my second question is, if a farmer doesn't have a existing second residential building that he can convert to housing or whatever, does then that allow him to sever a lot and put a second building on, a residential building?
No. No. Marg confirmed this, but my understanding is this has nothing to do with permitting extra consents on farm residential. The
That's
only
correct.
allowed consent from my farm perspective, if it's a farm through a farm consolidation, you have a surplus farm dwelling. But you can't put an ARU on and then sever it.
No.
It's not allowed. That's provincial policy.
Okay.
Is that answers?
Well, that clarifies. yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah.
But then my next question is, or comment is then, we have zoning bylaws.
Mhm.
They are legal entities
Mhm.
that are enforceable if there's a violation. So we're not enforcing Bayham's zoning bylaws now fully.
Mhm.
So this is just going to add, as I see it, it's going to add another layer that has to be enforced because there are going to be potential misuses. We have very vagrant violations of zoning bylaws now in Bayham, and they're not being enforced. So why would you add another layer of bureaucracy and policy when you're not enforcing your existing zoning bylaws? Simple question.
Yeah, I understand what you're asking and what you're saying, but I would argue and counter that it already is allowed through secondary residential units on farm. Policy already exists. This is just changing the naming from secondary units to additional residential unit.
But it still leaves the question of present zoning bylaws not being enforced.
Yep.
So, like, when, I just don't see this being a benefit. Bam, I understand you can't do much about it because it's parental
Oh, no,
policy.
No,
But to me, in my way of looking at it, if you're not enforcing existing zoning bylaws, why add more zoning bylaws? That just increases the potential for more infractions. And they'll happen. They're happening now.
Mm.
So basically, my question is, if you're not going to enforce your existing bylaws, why bother adding any more? You want to turn it into a Wild West? Let's turn it into a Wild West. Let people do what they want.
I hear your concerns, Tony, but I don't see it. What I'm seeing is that, yes, there are some abuses of the current zoning that's going on. I won't deny it. Am I, is it suggesting that by changing the naming from a secondary dwelling
Well,
unit to an ARU is going to open it up? I don't think it will.
I'm talking about the enforcing it. If you do pass this bylaw enforcement. We have zoning.
Well, that's right. And, I would agree. Yeah, Tony, and your point is on enforcement, I guess, is absolutely a topic for consideration, but that doesn't. We need to discuss about the public meet, the
Right,
meat that's on the
understand.
table today, which is changing the name from a secondary dwelling to an
But if-
ARU.
but it's a change in the zoning bylaws.
Just from a naming perspective.
Still a change. And from a legal standpoint.
So we'll call it Mike rather than Dave. But no, the point being, it's just changing the
I
changing the name.
understand that, I
Yeah.
understand, but I'm more concerned with any changes you make when you don't enforce your existing bylaws. How are you going to enforce, how are you going to enforce this one?
Understood, but as trying to point out, enforcement isn't the topic for the evening.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Fine,
Just a minute, Counselor. Mr. Casinas has the floor yet.
yep, I'm fine, if you're not going to enforce, that's fine.
Oh, no, I didn't say I'm not willing to
Okay.
enforce
We're
it.
not, maybe,
we wanna
maybe
talk about-
we should set up, maybe then, Mayor, I can ask you to set up, convene a meeting sometime where we can have a discussion about enforcement.
Absolutely. Sure. Counselor, you have a question for Mr. Casinas.
Thank you. Just a clarification. The bylaw for ARUs already exists. It just has a different name. We're renaming it, but it remains the same, and it's a housekeeping bylaw that's being updated.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's my understanding.
It's
Yes.
not a change. It's not an additional bylaw. It's just the name change to make it more consistent throughout the whole bylaw and throughout the
But
area.
if I'm hearing correctly, under this new act that the government wants to impose, what other benefit is that to Bayham? You're not gonna get into the housing business, I presume.
BAM's not going to build houses, no,
Good.
no.
I appreciate to hear that. We're still trying to pay for 600
Yeah, I
tons
hear
of
you.
scrap
I hear you.
steel down there.
But
Okay, all right.
Just to-
If we want, okay, it's not an enforcement issue. We'll leave that for another time.
let's talk about that another time. Let's talk about definitional change. That's what it is in the night.
Okay.
And to be quite honest with you, Counselor, there is one addition. That's the addition of water to the definition of obnoxious use.
Sorry.
But other than that, it's just renaming it.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Thank you.
Okay. And let's have that conversation someday, Tony. Yep, agreed. We can probably arrange something like that. Anyone else from the public? Please sign in at the podium.
So I wasn't gonna make any oral submissions because I submitted an email and an 8-page document, which I hope will be read. But I'm coming up here because I'm looking at the notice. It says Section 4.59, second dwelling units, replace the second dwelling units with additional residential units. So you're right, we're name changing, but also we're replacing and revising sections A through H in its entirety with new provisions in accordance with the official plan. So there are being new provisions within this zoning bylaw. And that's not what I just heard from this council and the CAO.
CO didn't say anything. 4.9, 4.59.
Subsections A through H in its entirety with new
Mhm.
provisions in accordance with the official plan. And my comments in my 8-page document are stemming from that, which
Okay,
these provisions are trying to meet the Better Homes, Build Faster.
Correct.
Bill 23. You've already made official plan amendments on that, and this is to come into conformity with your official plan to meet this. And my concern is that putting a building height limit of 7 meters almost negates the ability to build second units because You're forcing people to build out rather than up. And so, and it's a more expensive build to build out rather than up. So affordability and the ability to build additional units is being impacted by a 7-meter height regulation. My document provides detailed information of the intent of the bylaw, as well as details every single dwelling type, maximum building height within BAM in the other zones, as well as all across Alvin County, as well as Norfolk. And 7 meters is just unheard of. The original purpose, the intent as documented was because we didn't have the fire services, we have debunked that myth. And we know we have the services. If not, you've put in 4.3 million into this budget for extra fire equipment. So certainly with 4.3 million in the budget for the fire department, they can handle and determine and figure out how to fight fires over 7 meters. That's my concern, and that's
Yep.
why I'm asking in this, that you include an amendment to the 7, because this whole application is to come into conformity with Bill 23. And so you want to be in conformity with Bill 23, and I don't think the residents of BAM should have to wait 4 or 5 years until we go through a comprehensive zoning bylaw. The poor gentleman that came in the meeting before us was just one example of about 3 or 4 previous examples where he had to pay $2,000.73, $2,073 for a variance application. Nobody else across BAM, Alvin, or Norfolk has to do it for an 8-meter building. That puts an unfair disadvantage onto BAM residents within residential 1 and 2. There apparently was no fire concerns or no regulations within the hamlets, within the agricultural areas, with industrial areas. It's not even across the board. It's a disadvantage specifically to village residential 1 and 2. We cannot grow, we cannot develop, we cannot meet the goals of the Ford government with this type of barrier in place.
Point of order, though. Marg, where in this bylaw amendment are we talking about building heights in the zoning bylaw amendment?
You're not.
It's not. So why is it part of this discussion tonight?
It's part of the discussion because purpose and intent, the purpose and intent of your bylaw.
Then this would necessitate an additional public meeting because it wasn't published nor on the agenda, Suzanne.
That's okay. You asked us to do several public meetings. We're not in any hurry.
Good enough. Thank you.
So the purpose of this is to come in to ensure conformity with the Planning Act legislative changes. As a result, the More Homes Built Faster Act and conformity to the Municipality of Bayham official plan as adopted by council and approved by Alvin County on November 14th. I make the submission that 7-meter building height does not comply or does not help that. We cannot build more homes better fast. But BAM can make $2,000.73 for every variance application that they pass.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Excuse me, refrain from applause in the room. Any other comments or public participation? All right. Would note that there was correspondence received this afternoon. That will be included in the report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, received today at 3:30 from Suzanne Schlotzhauer with comments to be considered adding to the housekeeping item regarding maximum building height in urban zones. This information will be included in a future staff report.
Thank you. Which there's no other business on this public meeting. Brings us to the adjournment motion then that the zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council and that pursuant to the Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for zoning application ZBA 2124 is now complete at 7:56 PM. Mover and seconder, please. Counselor Froze will move. Did I see a seconder? Counselor Chilcott. All in favor? Carried. So this public meeting is adjourned. Now, anyone want a break before we move on? It's moving on 8 o'clock. Take 5 minutes. Recess. Welcome back. We left off at 12.2D on the agenda. Report DS 6124 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding the rezoning application ZBA 1824 Weeb at 55309 Talbot Line. Marg, looking forward to your report.
Thank you very much. And through you to council. The application before you was submitted by appointed agent Michelle Hammond from MH Design on behalf of John and Tina Weeb to rezone their property at 55309 Talbot Line. The subject property is currently Hamlet residential because it is in the hamlet of North Hall. And they're looking to ask for a amendment to the maximum height for an accessory building in the HR zone, which is currently at 4.5 meters in the zoning bylaw. And they're asking for a height of 6.1 meters. They're also asking an amendment to the maximum floor area of 372 meters squared for the accessory building, whereas the zoning bylaw limits it to 75 square meters or 8% lot coverage, whichever is less. The effect of the bylaw is to permit a new accessory building on the subject lands for the storing of a boat, camping trailer, and personal belongings. The public meeting was held on July the 18th, 2024, with the appointed agent Michelle Hammond present. There were no oral or written public submissions. The attached planner's memorandum dated August the 7th, 2024, provides a full analysis of the application against the official plan and zoning bylaw, and also noting that the Ministry of Transportation was consulted and they do not require a building and land use permit for this development. Staff and planner concur the rezoning application meets the policies and recommends approval to change the zoning on the parcel from Hamlet Residential Zone to a site-specific Hamlet Residential HR 16 zone to permit the development of the accessory building on the lands for the personal storage of the boat, camping trailer, and personal belongings. And this requires relief from zoning bylaw sections 9.5.1 and 9.7. And I leave it with you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for that report, Mark. Does anyone have any questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Hey,
Councilor
just a point of clarification on procedure and everything, because this is another one with the maximum height thing. When and how is the correct time to address this maximum height bylaw before the official plan, so that we're not wasting people's time and money and our time actually, because we just approve them all anyway. So I just would like to know through you to CAO the proper way to maybe put a temporary bylaw in while we're doing the official plan to avoid this extra work. So I don't even know when to bring it up, but now that we're talking in this one again about height, I was just wondering how can we address that?
Got an answer for that, Thomas?
I would defer that to Marg. Marg, do you have any information on how that process might work? Interim control may be something that works, but that's usually to prohibit or to suspend a certain type of development. That wouldn't necessarily apply in this case, as far as I know.
No, and through your worship to council. First, I want to clarify one thing. This application is for height of an accessory building.
Okay.
The comments that have been made previously and the information that was submitted was dealing with the maximum height of a primary dwelling.
Right,
Two different things we're talking about.
okay.
So back to your question though, as far as when is the appropriate time, if council desires staff to put together a specific report at this time prior to us considering a comprehensive or considering the comprehensive zoning review, we can do that.
Well, that,
And we could deal with it as a separate issue if that's council's desire. It can't necessarily be included in the housekeeping. It has not been advertised as part of the amendments that are coming forward. If council desires it to be more of an immediate concern, we would have to revise all of the housekeeping notices. We would have to do that again because we have to publicly put it out there that we're considering something else other than what's on the notice. So either, those are your options. We deal with it separately, or we can go back and we can deal with it with the housekeeping if that's what you wish to do.
Well,
But we would have to re-advertise the process for the
Okay,
housekeeping
that-
bylaw.
I understand. Thanks for the clarification. It's just, I don't know, it's at least a half a dozen and we never disagree with it. So it just seems kind of a redundant, pointless thing to keep going through this 8-meter thing all the time. It just, what is there, at least 6 this year? And we've never said no, so I don't know why people have to ask if we're never gonna deny them. It just seems kind of, I don't know, one of those rules that should be cleaned up for the sake of saving people a couple thousand in our time in council.
I think Marg has identified a pathway forward if you wish to do that. If you wish staff to put together a report coming forward, and which will necessitate I would say a staff report, a public meeting. There would have to be compare and contrast of why and what. And that. You may have, but staff have not. Right. So that is, if council wishes to do that, would enter that as a separate motion. You could do it, or give notice of motion. We can take care of it on the next agenda. I'm not saying pass the zoning bylaw. I'm saying ask for a report.
Okay, I will make a notice of motion before the next meeting.
We'll walk through the process when we get there.
Thank you.
All right. To this application. Any questions? And the motion reads, a report DS 6124 regarding the Weeb rezoning application ZBA 1824 be received for information. And that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations Bill 73 Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015, it be pointed out that at the public participation meeting held July the 18th, 2024, associated with this application, there was one oral presentation by the appointed agent and no written submissions received regarding this matter, and that all considerations were taken into council's decision passing this resolution, and that zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on a property located at Part Lot 9, Concession 9, known municipally as 55309 Talbot Line, from Hamlet Residential HR to site-specific Hamlet Residential HR 16, to permit the development of an accessory building for personal storage of a boat, camping trailer, and personal belongings, which requires relief from the zoning from the following provisions. Section 9.5.1, to permit a maximum accessory building height of 6.1 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is required. And section 9.7, to permit a maximum floor area of 372.0 square meters for an accessory building, whereas 75 square meters or 8% lot coverage, whichever is less, is required. And that zoning bylaw number Z 786/2024 be presented to council for enactment. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councilor Emerson and Deputy Mayor Weisler. All in favor? That's carried. Item E, report DS 6224 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding the rezoning application of ZBA 1924 Giesbrick at 11306, 11390, and 11450 Ridge Line. Margaret?
Thank you, your worship, and through you to council. The report before you is for a rezoning application submitted by appointed agent Michael Sereni of Gibson, Bennett, Groom and Sereni on behalf of Neil and Maria Giesbrick. They are looking to rezone their property on Ridge Line, and it is a condition of a consent application. E 7523 that was conditionally approved on May 22nd, 2024 by the Elgin Land Division Committee. The effect of the bylaw is to recognize the residential nature of the newly created residential lot and to prohibit new dwellings on the retained farm parcel. The application was for severing a surplus farm dwelling. Public meeting was held on July the 18th with the appointed agent and no oral or written public submissions were received. Staff report DS 3224 regarding the consent applications E 7523 and E 3024, along with the planner's memorandum dated April 11, was presented, considered, and supported by council on April the 18th, 2024. Staff and planner concur the rezoning application meets the policies and recommend approval to change the zoning on the proposed severed lot containing a farm dwelling deemed surplus from agricultural A1A zone to rural residential RR, and to change the zoning on the retained lot from agricultural A1A zone to special agricultural A2 to prohibit residential dwellings to meet the policies of our official plan for the severance of a surplus farm dwelling. And I leave it with you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that, Mark. Does anyone have any questions? You can recall, this was a bit of a convoluted process to get this applicant this far. Okay. If there are no questions, then we have the following motion before us. That report DS 6224 regarding the Giesbrecht rezoning application ZBA 1924 be received for information. And that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations Bill 73 Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015. It be pointed out at the public participation meeting held July the 18th, 2024, associated with this application. The property owner was in attendance with no oral or written submissions received regarding this matter, and that all considerations were taken into account in council's decision passing this resolution. And that zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on a property located at part lots 23 and 24, concession 8, known municipally as 11306 Ridge Line, from agricultural A1A zone to rural residential zone on the severed lot, and change the zoning on the retained parcel known municipally as 11390 and 11450 Ridge Line from agricultural A1A to special agricultural A2 to prohibit new dwellings as a condition of consent E 75-24, to permit the severance of an existing single detached dwelling as a surplus farm dwelling. And that zoning bylaw number Z 788/2024 be presented to council for enactment. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Emerson will move, Councillor Froese will second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Almost done, Bart. Report DS 6324 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding delegation of powers and duties, development agreements, and temporary use and removal demolition agreements. Margaret, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council will recall that bylaw 2014-090, being a bylaw to adopt a policy with respect to the delegation of powers and duties of council, is currently in effect. This bylaw delegated authority to the Chief Administrative Officer for approval of site plan control applications. Delegating the authority to staff for these site plan agreements has worked quite well. It provides a more timely review and execution of the agreements. Staff have indicated that this approval mechanism may also work for other agreements, such as the development agreements and temporary use and removal or demolition agreements, should council be desirous of this process. Development agreements are most commonly used for supplementary farm dwellings and infrastructure construction, i.e. road construction. We talked about one of those tonight. It would be a development agreement. Or the supplementary farm dwellings that we know we do through a minor variance, and we do a development agreement along with that. Temporary use and removal or demolition agreements are used for situations where a landowner wishes to reside in a temporary trailer or in an existing dwelling while constructing a new dwelling. This agreement needs to be in place prior to the issuance of a building permit for a new dwelling, and so the timing of executing this agreement directly correlates to the timelines of issuing a building permit. Regularly, these agreements are associated with other permits or other applications, such as planning applications, which already receive council support or approval. Entering into an agreement is often a condition of approval, and council approval is a second time essentially on the same matter, and it is redundant. 2024 has seen a marked increase in planning applications, and by association, the number of development agreements and these temporary use, removal, and demolition agreements are coming before council as standalone reports. Staff are of the opinion that delegating the authority to a specific staff member to enter into these agreements would save administrative time. These agreements could be treated similar to site plan approvals, with council receiving an update on agreements entered into under delegated authority via information reports at regular council meetings. Should council wish to delegate such approval authority, an amending bylaw to bylaw number 2014-090 would provide such authority to the chief administrative officer for approval of these agreement types. And I leave it with you, your worship.
Thank you for that. Okay, council, any concerns, questions? None?
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, if that authority is currently delegated, what oversight or for council to staff is there gonna be if if there is a disagreement on whatever we're asking people to do? Like say a demolition agreement or something like that. I was just wondering, is there any place for us to still speak to a matter, provide some sway?
Well, I'm sitting here thinking about a demolition agreement. There's usually something under the building code, but still, currently under site plan approvals, staff have that delegated authority, and yet, they bring the agreements to us for information. It's just that they've already been executed and saves time. And that's a similar process that's being sought here. So rather than, these things coming back to council, which may delay the development process, just asking to move the authority over so they can execute it. But if I read in the report, the intention is that reports will be coming to council when these things occur. Just that they may have already heard. Okay. That satisfy?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Okay. And I would also put it out there to council that council has the authority at any time to rescind that authority, if you wish. Okay.
Your worship, if I may just add one.
Yep.
One point. When we're dealing with the temporary use demolition removal agreements, it is spoken to in our zoning bylaw. That it is an agreement that the chief building official is involved in, because it is directly related to getting a building permit. So there is that cross consideration. As well as development agreements, most likely you will see as a committee of adjustment, you recommend a condition to be a development agreement. You've already approved the minor variance with a condition for a development agreement. We would execute the development agreement in a more timely manner than bringing it back. As well, for road construction, for instance, we had one tonight. They need to extend Elgin Street. They need to enter into a development agreement. That goes to Land Division Committee as a condition. The condition will be that they enter into a development agreement with the municipality. You've supported that condition. LDC will consider that condition. They will include it in their approval, in their conditional approval. We can execute that development agreement in a more timely manner as staff. Again, it doesn't have to come back to council. You've already said that that's a condition. You've already said that you would support that. So this is where we're coming from. We're trying to streamline some of these processes so that it is more timely for the applicant to get these agreements in place.
Thank you for clarification. Again, any questions, concerns? Okay. The motion would read that report DS 6324 regarding delegation of powers and duties, development agreements and temporary use and removal demolition agreements be received for information, and that the municipality of Bayham's chief administrative officer be delegated authority to enter into development agreements and temporary use and removal demolition agreements on council's behalf, and that the appropriate amending bylaw be presented to council for enactment. Mover and seconder. Councillor Chilcott and Deputy Mayor Weiser, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Section 13, Finance and Administration, 13.1 Correspondence, 13.11 to receive for information. Item A, Town of Plimpton, Wyoming, regarding underserviced cellular communication services in rural and urban centers in the town of Plimpton, Wyoming, and other rural and urban centers across Lambton County and beyond. Item B, Township of Georgian Bluffs, regarding the AMO-OMA Joint Health Resolution Campaign. Item C, County of Frontenac, regarding a request for provincial government to recognize the physician shortage in Frontenac County. D, Township of Lucan Biddulph, regarding the AMO-OMA Joint Health Resolution Campaign physician shortage. Item E, Municipality of Wawa, regarding the Ontario Forest Industries Association, immediate action needed to support Ontario's forest sector. F, Town of Cochrane, regarding Ontario Regulation 391/21, blue box for ineligible sources. G, Municipal Engineers Association of Ontario, the Ontario Provincial Standards. H, the Ministry of Natural Resources, regarding the proposal regarding development of commercial scale framework for geologic carbon storage. And item I, the County of Elgin, regarding the no parking zone on Fulton Street. Does anyone have any questions? Wish to single out any piece of correspondence? Or any comments? And I need a mover and seconder for the following, that items 13.11A through I be received for information. Deputy Mayor Weiser will move, Councillor Crows will second. All in favor? It's carried. Brings us to 13.2, reports to council. We have report CAO 3124 by Thomas Thayer, CAO, regarding survey and consideration of surplus and street lands.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thomas?
So this report follows a report from June 6th of this year regarding the stop up and close of components of Snow Street in Vienna, and some information regarding the potential buildability of Ann Street lands, which are parcels of land in Plan 54 Vienna to the east of the Vienna Community Park. Ultimately, council, after discussion, passed a motion to request that staff obtain a survey with 4 lots fronting onto Ann Street. So this has been brought forward as part of this report. The survey is attached to the report, and there's an excerpt included in the report that defines the 4 potential lots, and they're broken down by in the table. So lot 1 is the furthest west. It's a part of the now closed Snow Street road allowance. Lot number 2 is components 2, 3, and 6. Lot 3 would be 4 and 7. Lot 4 is 5 and 8, and the remainders are parts 9, 10, and 11 on the survey. So the report essentially re-identifies to council how the orientation of lots, sizing, frontage, servicing fit within the planning framework of the municipality itself. The proposed 4 lots would be compliant with the municipality's official plan by seeking development in areas of full servicing and in a compact and contiguous fashion. And further identifying that the lot orientation does allow for 4 lots that fit the municipality's current zoning bylaw, specifically sections 10.3 and 10.4, which address minimum lot area and minimum lot frontage. In Vienna, on full services, an R1 zone property should have a minimum lot frontage of 15 meters, a minimum lot area of 800 square meters. The attached survey does satisfy these parameters. So should council wish to proceed with any surplus, we would commence with the necessary housekeeping for the western half of the Snow Street road allowance, which would, by virtue of our zoning bylaw, retain the institutional zone. So that would have to be a planning process that we follow. In regards to servicing, council didn't specifically direct us to look into servicing, but we did obtain some additional information for council to consider. The previous report identified that servicing each of the lots would cost between $20,000 and $25,000. The manager of capital projects led a quoting process, and we obtained 2 quotes through companies that were willing to provide the same. And the low quote was actually $13,995 plus HST. A far bit less than what we were originally projecting, which is good to see. And one of the lots currently does have wastewater at the curb, so that would also reduce that unit cost very slightly because the only 3 lots would have to be serviced with sanitary. Again, for council's information, net proceeds could go to a variety of different strategic areas, should council wish to proceed with the surplus. So the primary one would be the extinguishment of the existing Ojibwa debt, which comes due in, if my math is correct, approximately 7 months. At this point in time, we're looking at being approximately $480,000 short of that. So any surplus would first and foremost go in that direction unless council directs us otherwise. And there are other options for any proceeds over and above that, including our lighthouse reserve, facilities reserve, parks and playground for non-core upgrades, and the contingency reserve for any rate stabilization in 2025 or in future years. High level, based upon some numbers, potential net cumulative proceeds could range anywhere between $650,000 and $900,000. Clearly, we have to go and get a more detailed estimate, and should council wish us to proceed with the process of surplus, then we'd get the land properly appraised and provide that for council for them to set the ultimate price. But at this time, we are seeking council's direction regarding these lands, and whether council wishes for us to proceed with a surplus of any or all of the proposed lots on the survey tonight. If we do, then per the recommendation, we would register the survey, and we would proceed with the appropriate comment period once that time has passed, and then we proceed with the process under our sale of surplus municipal lands policy. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it with you and council for discussion. I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you very much for that report, Thomas. Any questions for staff? Councilor Pros.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Are we deciding tonight what to do with the proceeds, or just whether to go ahead with the drawing, the survey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councilor. Tonight, it is just direction to proceed with surplus. Any decision regarding use of net proceeds or how to proceed with the sale can be made at a later date.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just wondering, Thomas, if you could walk me through the timeline. If tonight we decide to deem them surplus, how soon before they are ready to be on the market?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the deputy mayor. There are some steps in the process that make it difficult to put a specific timeline on, but if council provides direction tonight, we'd reach out to the surveyor to register our plan with land titles. That would give us an R plan number, and we can move forward with a comment period at that time. We'd also reach out to our municipal realtor and an appraiser to provide valuation that would come back to council. Council essentially, based on that, they would set any value of land and they can direct how to proceed with sale. So we'd expect that to come back to council probably in October. Again, this is a ballpark. Council has 3 options for any sale of land. So it can be direct sale to landowner, which, given we have 4 lots, would not be something we'd recommend. The other 2 options are sale by realtor or sale by public tender. So those would be 2 options that council would likely consider. And if council considers one of those and provides direction, in theory, we could have something marketable November, December of this year, which means that we'd have the sale in time, hopefully, fingers crossed, for the March deadline. Now, that's an ambitious timeline, so don't hold me to that. That's very high level. Some things could change. Timing of various individuals getting us documentation that council needs to make a decision, but I would say all in all, you're looking at between 7 and 9 months.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we have a proposed motion. that reads, Report CAO 3124 regarding survey and consideration of surplus and street lands be received for information. And that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Bayham deems parts 1 through 8 on the survey yet to be registered surplus to the needs of the municipality for purposes of sale. And that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Bayham accepts the quote provided by PBR Excavating in the amount of $13,995 plus HST to install servicing parts 1 through 8 on survey yet to be registered. And that the costs associated with ensuring proper water and wastewater servicing to the aforementioned parts 1 through 8 be funded from the wastewater reserve fund. And that the public comment period of no fewer than 21 days be commenced at the appropriate time as determined by staff after such time as a survey is registered. I need a mover and seconder for that motion. Counselor Chilcott will move. Seconder. Counselor Froze will second. All
Can I ask a question?
under the wire, okay?
Under the wire. Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. The public comment period, is that also an opportunity for council to have comment as well? Or is this the platform right now, this discussion? Once this is moved, are we allowed to have discussion?
Yeah,
Okay,
always.
okay. Just wanting a process clarification. Thank you.
This is just authorizing staff to move forward to prep these lands for sale,
Right. Okay.
okay? They have to be registered. They have to be serviced. All right? And then they'll get the appropriate information. Once it's registered, then it goes through the comment period. Okay? And then if council deems it appropriate, move forward.
Got it. Thank you.
Unless I'm on a step.
No, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. The comment period, the public comment period is specific to the public being able to make comment. And generally speaking, the intent of it is that any individual who may be negatively impacted by the sale, specifically with respect to their property, can make a comment. But the way that the comment period has generally operated in Bayham is that anybody can provide comment on the potential sale.
All right. Now, as to the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, it is carried. Brings us to section 14, the bylaws. Bylaw number 2024-048, bylaw to adopt official plan amendment number 37. Bylaw number 2024-049, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2014-090. A bylaw to adopt a policy with respect to the delegation of powers and duties of council of the Corporation Municipality of Bayham. Bylaw number 2024-050, being a bylaw to appoint municipal officers and employees for the municipality of Bayham. Bylaw number Z 786-2024, being a bylaw to amend bylaws numbers Z 456-2003 as amended. Weeb. Bylaw number Z 787-2024, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z 456-2003 as amended. Bergen. F. Bylaw number Z 788-2024, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z 456-2003 as amended. Giesbrecht. Any questions or concerns regarding the bylaws? Then I will need a mover and seconder for the following, that bylaws numbers 2024-048, 2024-049, 2024-050, Z 786-2024, Z 787-2024, and Z 788-2024 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Chilcott, Deputy Mayor Weisler, all in favor? That's carried. Unfinished business. Just a question for you from a process point of view. Is there a spot on the agenda to address Councillor Emerson's concern tonight? Is this under other business?
What I would suggest is that if we're looking at getting a motion or a notice of motion on a future agenda, I would ask Megan to work with the counselor to craft something for the September 5th meeting, and then we can have it handled at that point in time.
That work for you?
That's great.
Okay. Then that deals with that. Thank you very much. Moving down to section 16, other business. We have the draft minutes of the July 15th, 2024 Waterfront Advisory Committee meeting. Anyone wish to address that? They're to be received for information. Any questions, concerns on those minutes? Point of clarification, note, they are draft minutes. They are not approved minutes.
This is correct. They are draft minutes.
Through Mr. Mayor.
Please.
At some point, can we clarify the terms of reference for the Waterfront Action Committee?
That's next.
That's next. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But still, the point I'm trying to make here is these are draft minutes. Okay. Seeing no questions, then the motion will read that the draft minutes from July 15th, 2024 Waterfront Advisory Committee meeting be received for information. Mover and seconder, please. Counselor Emerson will move. I think I saw Counselor Froze stick his hand up.
Mhm.
Seconded. All in favor? And that's carried. Which then brings us to item B, the Waterfront Advisory Committee recommendations to council. And who's bringing that one or speaking to that?
Mr. Mayor, I'll briefly speak to it. So a couple of recommendations before council from the Waterfront Advisory Committee. The first one, as we've heard through the open forum tonight. So there is a recommendation to amend capital item PR02 to remove the beach playground equipment from the budget for 2025-2034. So this is a multi-year item. There's essentially one playground per year. So we would then, essentially amend the item to remove that $75,000 item. The recommendation in this regard is similar to how we handled the addition of this item last year. We referred it to capital budget deliberations, and then council can provide direction at that time. That provides council the opportunity to ask whatever questions they need of staff and gather what information they might need. And we can have the discussion when we're discussing the capital budget as a whole. The other recommendation was the Waterfront Advisory Committee is desirous of reviewing their terms of reference to be in line with the lands included in the Waterfront Master Plan. So this is an item that staff would suggest deferring to the new term of council. The intent being that the council of the day establishes the committee and the scope of the committees that they have desire for at the start of the term. It's uncommon to expand a committee in this manner kind of midterm. So we would recommend that be deferred into a new council for them to establish what they want for their committees and scope of jurisdiction. I'm available for questions, as is committee chair Weisler and the clerk. So I'll leave it with you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Let's break this down into two components to deal with before we put a motion forward. The first is there any concern from council for referring or defer the discussion on playground equipment to the 2025, 2034 capital budget deliberations?
No,
It's
that's where,
probably the appropriate
that's where it
spot.
should be.
All right,
Mr. Mayor.
so let's deal with, that one's dealt with. The next one, are there any concerns or discussion on regarding the terms of reference and perhaps deferral or to the new term of council, or do you wish to do something about it now? Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. I think we need more information on what the scope is. When you read, there's the lands of the Big Otter, like it's waterfront. So how does waterfront just become the beach? Like there's rivers and there's streams and
Correct.
everything in Port Burwell that are in the documents, the description of the subject lands. So how is it now? I know it used to be a blue flag committee, but it's not now. Now it's a water advisory committee. So
No,
how did that
water-
change?
Mm-mm,
No,
no.
no, you're
Sorry, waterfront,
mistaken.
sorry.
The thing you need to take a look at is what the terms of reference were as defined by this council at the beginning of this term, as what the the scope of the committee. That's the thing to consult.
Right.
It's different than what the former Harborfront Committee or Bayham Waterfront Committee. Okay, and that's what I'm asking, or do you want, do you take, and perhaps you were correct, and maybe we do need to see or revisit what the scope of the committee was versus past.
That's
scope.
what I'm saying. We need to get more information and determine whether or not other items
Right.
need to be included.
That's one thing. The second component is to consider, is it, in your opinion, the best interest to change the scope midterm?
I
Or do
think
you let-
if there's an issue or an error in what the scope is, it should be changed at that time, not wait a year and a half, 2 years to do it. If there's not an error, if it's not gonna be an issue, then it can stay, but we need to review that and determine whether it needs to be changed.
Thomas?
Just a quick response to the counselor's inquiry. So there's no error. The terms of reference that were brought forward are to build off of the previous Blue Flag Management Committee and encapsulate that within lands adjacent to that are also under the municipality's jurisdiction. Much of the lands in the Harborfront land that the Harborfront Committee oversaw are not municipal. So we wouldn't have much, if any, oversight over those lands. The harbor is still very much in federal jurisdiction. So this is why when staff brought the terms of reference forward to council in early 2023, it focused on municipal lands at the beach and directly adjacent to, including those components that had capital items such as parking and the pier. That's why it was brought forward the way that it was. It was not scoped in error. It was scoped as a way to expand the blue flag requirements of having a committee by including other abutting public lands.
Sorry, maybe I shouldn't have said error by omission. If there was an omission, not an error. But
Counselor Emerson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think there's an error or omission. It was clearly established guidelines.
Mhm.
And I think maybe a reiteration of the terms of reference to the Waterfront Action Committee might be in order, just so we know. And as far as jurisdiction on harborfront lands, a lot of that land's privately owned, and I would object strongly to any advisory committee suggesting what I should do with my own land. So I just think we should clearly define once again where the committee stands until the next election and the next time we set up committees.
Okay, so you're suggesting let the next term.
Yeah, and
All
then just let's reestablish what those terms are.
Okay, Counselor Chilcott?
sorry, I did not mean to infer that it would be the private property, but if anything municipal owned, then they should have provide advice.
Mhm.
That's all. Like, I wouldn't want to go on to Counselor Emerson's property and say, you must do this. That's not what we need to do.
I already have that.
Properly does.
That's okay.
Say, that happens across municipality now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, Madam Chair, have you got any comment? Do you want to wade in?
Sure, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments. Some of the suggestions that came through the discussion, and again, we have to remember that these committees are set up to provide comment, have discussion, and submit those comments and recommendations or thoughts to council. I can say that some of the items that are in front of us tonight weren't in a unanimous discussion. So, but that again is all part of the process of bringing these things and concerns forward. The piece with the terms of reference, I really got the feel at the meeting that a lot of that had to do with parking. But those parking lands that are adjacent are private property. So that's why I understand why they're not included in the scope, but I think the option or there was quite a bit of comment about what are we gonna do? We know we have a parking issue down there. And how can we maybe increase the scope of our discussion? But again, that's gonna be done with private landowners and that would be done through council, not through the committee. So these were just some of the comments that were coming out of that discussion that night. So, and you know, as a committee chair, I think those comments and discussions are very important. So I welcome the comments and we had the discussion, we bring it forward, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it is up to the council to make those decisions. Thank you.
Well, that's fair. That's fair, Mr. Mayor. That's
Okay.
fair comment.
All right. Any further comments or discussion? Writing it now, I've got a proposed motion in front of me. I can read it, see where it goes. All right. The draft motion reads that the Waterfront Advisory Committee recommendations to council be received for information, and that discussions on playground equipment at the East Beach be deferred to the 2025-2034 capital budget deliberations, and that a review of the Waterfront Advisory Committee terms of reference be deferred to the new term of council. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Emerson. Councillor Froese will second. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. It's carried. Brings us to 16.1 in camera session. The motion reads that the council do now rise to enter into an in-camera session at 8:51 PM to discuss a confidential item regarding labor relations, employee negotiations, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, that's QP. Item B, confidential item regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, labor relations, employee negotiations, human resources. And item C, confidential item regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual advisory committees. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Weiser, Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? We are carried. That's carried. We're going dark. Have a good night, everyone.